Welcome to Life Stories. I'm Zuena Chiremasali, your host. Now, educating a girl child back in those days, in those small communities, was considered as useless just because girls grew up purposely for marriage. They often had little or no education at all, and what we call women emancipation today was far away from women of those days. To a few who managed to fight these beliefs and norms, fruits of their struggles against discrimination and mistrust of the girl child are still visible up to date. Today on the show, we look at a true story of success amidst uncountable difficulties in the life of Honorable Dr. Miria Koburunga Matembe. Her educational journey that was engulfed by so many hardships and cultural norms that only saw girls being either teachers or nurses and laid a very rich educational platform for the boys was enough to overshadow Miria's dreams. She fought for her rights at a tender age, and up to date her struggles for equality, injustices in society, and the full right for the girl child still lives on. This is the story of Honorable Dr. Miria Koburunga Matembe.
I am Miria Matembe. My maiden name is Koburunga. My father's name is Rukoza. Therefore, if you want the whole name, I'm Miria Rukoza Koburunga Matembe.
Okay.
When it comes to titles, you call me the Honorable Doctor Miria Matembe. I was born to peasants in Rutoma with Wera Kashad. My late parents were Esses and Samuel Rukoza, and I was born among 9 children. I'm the fourth of the 9 children, who were 5 boys and 4 girls.
Where did you spend your childhood?
Well, I spent my childhood with my parents at Rutoma. I went to school at Rutoma Primary School, through to secondary education, through to P7, and then I went to Weranyanji Girls Secondary School for my O-level, and for my A-level I went to Namasagari College. By then it was called Kamuli College. And eventually I ended at Makerere University, where I studied my law degree and had my diploma in legal practice. I started my working career as a pupil state attorney in the Department of DPP, Ministry of Justice, where I stayed for a little while because I could not stand the injustices there.
How long were you there?
A few months, and then I went to work as a lecturer at MUBS, which was by then Uganda College of Commerce, until eventually, after 5 years there, I joined the Central Bank of Uganda, attached to the Chartered Institute of Bankers. That's where politics found me. My passion in life is to fight for gender equality and women empowerment. And this one is a childhood dream.
That's one thing I know about you. When you talk about Miria Matembe, most ladies know you for that.
Yes.
Yes, that's the first thing that comes to their minds.
It is my childhood dream, and I want to call it my God-given purpose in life. Because as I grew up, that's what I saw. In fact, my struggle and my passion is based on a lived experience. My childhood lived experience shaped my direction and determined my sense of focus. Because you may be surprised, but this is true, by the time I was 9 years, I had already made up my mind that I would study law. 9 years, I had already made up my mind, because I wanted to lead for women. Because as I grew up, I faced discrimination. The little story I usually tell people is that I was growing up with my brother, as I was telling you, 5 boys, 4 girls. And my mother had it in such a way that 1 boy, 1 girl. After that, 1 boy, 1 girl. We were alternating. So I came immediately after my brother, and so we were same age, moving together. We were coming from a poor background, peasants, earning a living through planting beans and matoke, selling them here and there. And at one stage, my father was running a kiosk, food kiosk, which of course we are calling a hotel in the village that time, to raise money to look after us. But I tell you what I came to notice as a young child, whenever there would be no sufficient school fees and we are sent away from school, my brother's school fees would be found immediately, either 1 day later or 2 days later, but mine would not be there for about a week or 2 weeks.
You had to sit and wait.
I had to sit at home while for him he goes to school immediately. And you know, in my young mind, I would say, but why? I'm asking myself, whom do you ask? Those days were not like now, where small girls face their mother and father and ask them why. During my childhood, you would never ask your parent why. Why is my fees not there? How could I stand up and do that? But in my mind, I was wondering, why is this right? To me, it was unfair. It was not right that for my brother would get preferential treatment over me. And yet, I was expected to perform as well in school as this one who was going all the time, and me, I'm not going. And besides this, I would see, because this one, discrimination against me, opened my mind. And I could see women also being unfairly treated at that village. Young age. Because as I told you, my mother was a woman leader. So they would come home and tell their stories. When those young people are seated near you as you tell stories, they certainly get these stories. And I could see these women, they are telling their stories of suffering, how their husbands are treating them, and they would be crying, and my mother would be counseling and comforting them. And so I could see that. And then also my aunt, who used to suffer quite a lot because her husband, I think, was a vagabond or something like that. He used to go to Uganda. You know, when you are in Ankole, he say he went away to Uganda to work as a porter. And then after so many months, he would come moreover with nothing. He never brought money. He never brought clothes for this poor woman. And this poor aunt would have kept behind in her home, caring for the children. But when he comes, then he beats her up, violence, you know, against her. And then she was my father's sister. She would take refuge in our home. Then after about 3 or so days or a week, my father would tell her, you are useless. That's why you never managed your home. And this was not kind.
It wasn't right.
And then my poor aunt would say, well, I'm not useless. I brought cows into this home, bride price. I'm not useless. I produced sons for this man. Now, my mind enlarged. Said, hey, this woman is only useful because she brought bride price. She's only useful because she produces sons. What about girls? You see? So my mind was really provoked by a number of these things. And it was not stable. I was, why? And then one day, I heard, I think somebody was killed in the village. And then they said, he will buy a pleader. You know, the other man who was arrested for killing him, the people were saying, he'll buy a pleader. Then they said, I said, pleader? Who is a pleader? They said, pleader is the person who pleads for others. You know, in our local language, you say pleader. Pleader is pleading for others. Then I said, pleader? How does this one become a pleader? They said they study law. So I said, when I am big,
I'm going to
study law. Plead for women and girls.
Nice.
To plead for them, why should they be treated like this differently? You know, that brother of mine I was telling you about did not, by the grace of God, that's why I told you mine is a God-driven purpose. I did so well, and I found that brother in P6. He repeated P6. I found him. We studied P6 together, irrespective of the fact that I continued to stay at home, no fees, no what. And when we went to P7, I did very well, and I got first grade, and he got second.
Wow.
And then, of course, I went to senior secondary school. By that time, there were not many secondary schools, and therefore, within second grade, you not get to senior secondary school. So he had to repeat. So he repeated P7, and I went to senior 1. Now, when I joined senior 2, my brother passed in grade 1 to go to senior 1. You can't believe what happened. But I think my father and my mother sat and agreed that they would withdraw me from secondary school in preference for the boy who has now passed to go to senior 1, because they couldn't afford school fees for two people in secondary school. But their wisdom could not tell them that this brilliant girl should be the one to continue with school because of culture, because I'm the girl and the other one is a boy. They wanted me to go to a teacher training college. My mother came to tell the headmistress of Weranyanji Girls Secondary School, Miss Hall, and he said, we want Koburunga to leave school and go for teacher training. I said, why? Because the boy is now going to secondary school, and I felt like dying, because this was total injustice, total unfairness, total unreasonableness. I couldn't understand. To me, it was completely irrational and so bad. And I told the headmistress, I am not leaving the school. I said, okay, I have heard that there are people who get bursaries to study. Can't I get bursary? And the teacher said, the headmistress said, the bursary, it is education officer, district education officer who gives the bursaries. And we went to district education officer Mbarara. You can imagine a small girl. By then I think was I 14 with my small school uniform. We go to this education officer. We sit outside the door. I didn't know the procedures of entering, and everybody was entering, getting out, entering, getting out. And when it was lunch time, the man opened the door, and I peeped in the office, and I saw he was coming, accompanying his guest, his last guest, and they were going for lunch. And we had been there since morning. So I told my mother, stand up in Nyankore. So we stood up. As soon as he arrived where we are seated, we stood up. Then he asked my mother in English, what do you want me? What do you want? What can I do for you? Yes. Then me, I'm the one who said, sir, I want fees. So he looked at me, then I started telling my story. And by then tears were falling down my cheeks. They want to get me out of school, and I'm the very clever one, and now I want to study law, and they are getting me out of school. The headmaster, I think the education officer could not understand. He said, okay, he said goodbye to his guest and said, come in. So when I entered, I told my story. He listened. So he said, which is your school? I told him Weranyanji. He said, you go back. You will get answer sometime. He wrote your name somewhere? I think so. Yes. So I went. I told my mother, he has said I go back to school. So whether you're right or not, so my mother went back home, and I went to school. And about 2 days later or 3, I saw the headmistress came running into my classroom and said, Koburunga, I have very good news for you. I got out. He said, you've got bursary. Yeah. And oh my God, that was the first breakthrough of my life.
In a family of 9 children, 5 boys and 4 girls, and in a society that only valued the boy-child education, Dr. Miriam Matembe is the only child in her family that made it beyond senior 4. Breaking the norms has been top of Miriam's agenda towards the struggle of the girl-child rights and women emancipation. She truly believes that society has to believe in one's capability to do something and not gender. This is Life Stories.
Among the 9 children in my family, I was the only one who went beyond senior 4.
Wow.
And now my sister, one of the remaining sister, after senior 4, she went to Shimon teacher training, started teaching, and eventually through grades, she has now become a graduate of social work. She lives in Vancouver, Canada. So of all the 5 boys, nobody went beyond senior 4.
How was your parents' reaction when they saw you succeeding?
You know, my parents, first of all, they continued with this resistance, nonsense of resistance. Because when they called me to study law, my father said, you cannot study law. You are supposed to study teaching or nursing.
Wasn't he happy for you?
You cannot study law. You must go to teach or nursing. You have got to understand this man and forgive him. One thing I thank my father for is that he sent all of us to school. At least, and they used to laugh at him, at least he sent all of us to school. But anyway, when they called me for HSC, for law, he said, on my dead body, you are not studying law. I said, what's wrong with you? I want to study law. He said, no, girls don't study law. I'm going to ostracize you if you study law. Oh yes, that's what he said.
Wow.
I said, excuse me, for me, I'm not the one who called myself study law. They called me at the university. So I said, if you don't want me to study law, you go to the university and tell the headmaster. Of course, he didn't know this business of vice chancellors and all that. So I said, you go and tell the headmaster that I want my child to study nursing or teaching. Because I tried to explain to him, unless I become a doctor, he said, doctor, you, Amario, I don't know what to call it in Runyankore, but in English, but he thought this is impudence, this is rude, a woman cannot study a doctorate, you can't go for doctor, you can't,
yes.
You know.
He felt like you're overstepping your powers.
I'm overstepping the norms.
Yes.
The norms are established.
Yes.
He didn't know that these are the norms I want to break.
Yes.
He never knew that I'm fighting against these norms. So when he insisted, I said, okay, go and tell the headmaster. When I went to marry, he even resisted the man I would marry. Because he started giving me, don't marry Muchiga, he's like this, don't marry this, he's like this. You know, he used to tell me, Koburunga, in case you want to marry, when you are still at Makerere, you know, don't bring here a northerner. He said, why don't you want a northerner? Because we don't speak the same language. We cannot communicate.
Because of the communication.
And then that's what he was telling me. And then when we came to the second term, he said, in case you want to marry, don't bring here Muganda. I said, why not a Muganda? He said, those Baganda, they are proud. They call us Obunyoro. They think they are the only tribe which matters. They don't respect us. And besides, they steal. They are thieves. I said, but when did they steal? He said, don't you see this Muganda who was caught stealing here at the trading center? And so, but anyway, and then when I came back for another term, he said, don't marry a Muchiga. I said, what's wrong with Bachiga? He said, oh, my daughter, those people eat too much. You cannot cook for those people, they eat too much. So he said, no Munyoro here. I said, what's wrong with Banyoro? They are greedy. Those people are greedy.
What was his tribe?
I said, we are Banyankore.
Banyankore.
So I said, how did you know Banyoro are greedy? He said, when I went to visit my son in Rubiri Secondary School, he was staying with a Munyoro boy, and I saw that Munyoro boy was greedy. But you can imagine these idiosyncrasies and biases which people make. You see one Munyoro boy, you conclude the whole tribe is the same. So anyway, by then I didn't bother so much because I was not thinking about marriage. Now when I came to secondary, to year 2 in Makerere, that's when I met this my husband. Then I took him, I said, well, I found this man, I want to marry him. He said, what? Koburunga, you are not serious. How can you bring this man? I said, what's wrong with this man? You ruled out all these other tribes. I took it for granted that a Munyankore would be okay. And I have brought a Munyankore. I'm a very obedient girl. I have brought a Munyankore here. He said, not the one from Igara. Igara is in Bushenyi. It is a different county, just a county. So I said, what's wrong? He said, these Banyigara people, they eat sheep. For us in Kashari County, we don't eat mutton. How can you bring here a man who eats sheep? I mean, it was becoming too much. I said, well, I either bring this one or I don't bring anybody else.
How long were you dating your husband before, okay, your boyfriend then, before you took him to your father?
Well, we had dated for a few, actually we didn't date for long before we married. Because when he came with all this enthusiasm. In fact, he overshadowed by whatever.
Yes.
It was a short time I introduced him, I think, within 4 months. 4 months.
To your parents?
You think those days you could date long time, they see you with a man. I introduced him. He's the one who told me, you show me your parent, take me to your home, show me your home. For him, he had graduated already. He was 8 years older than me. By then I was 21 years actually when I had met him.
Did you have any boyfriend before your husband?
Oh yeah, that is also another funny story. I talked about this story also. Of course, when I was in HSC, I got a boyfriend, and I used to go and visit him at Makerere, and until he told me, of course, I didn't want to engage in sex, because the other story is that my mother had told me, when I was going to the secondary school, we passed a swamp, and she had told me, when you get pregnant, don't come back home, throw yourself into this swamp. So I looked at the swamp, I looked at myself, I said, no getting pregnant. So for me, every time I would go to school, when boys used to talk to me, like we would relate with Ntare boys, you know, when they are talking points to me when they visit school, for me my mind is at the swamp. And during the vacation, when you go to fetch water, you find these boys, they are there coming, finding you at the well, accompanying you and telling you, making their points. For me, my mind will switch and will be to the swamp. And I imagine myself in that swamp, the crocodiles are eating me and the snakes. And I said, no way. There was this one Uncle Chad, my Uncle Chad, who was my very close friend. So his friend, when I went to visit him, I found that he had a friend who was at the university. So he became my friend. Now when he became my friend, he started asking for sex. Of course, me, I could not. Until one time he told me, don't come back here until you are interested in sex. And that was the end of the friendship. Yes. And then another one, when had I reached Makerere? Not yet, I got another one. Then this other one asked for sex. I said, no, me, I cannot have sex. But you know, those people were very respectable. They would not force you at all. If you say no, you've said no. So this very one told me, you know I will manage you. And that annoyed me. Because he told me you'll manage me. I got so angry, I got annoyed. How can you say you'll manage me? And that was the end of the friendship. And then another one, when I had reached university, I got this other one. And I used to go to his place to visit him. So one time, I didn't have an appointment with him. They said, okay, there are no classes tomorrow. So I got my books. I said, let me go to visit my boyfriend and do my homework there. Then I went there. When I went there for the homework, I found him when he was entering his vehicle to go away. So I went in the house and started doing my homework. And I waited for him, He didn't turn up. He came back very late, and I was very, very annoyed with him. I said, you know what? This is the end of our friendship. He said, why? I said, because you went away, where were you? And then he told me, but you see, Miria, I did not have an appointment with you. Wow. The thing, he said, you see, you didn't give me, an appointment or something like that. And the thing hurt me. I was so hurt. I said, you treat me like that? Okay, until I have an appointment, I will not come. So when he dropped me, he came back to pick me another time. I said, until I have an appointment. When I met Matembe, the first thing I told him was, for me, I'm not interested in sex. He was so clever. He told me, even me, I'm not interested.
That's the only way to manage you.
That's how he managed me, and I think, but he belonged to a circle of relatives and friends where he met me.
Yes.
Because we met at a Kasichi of relatives, close relatives and friends. And I think they had alerted him and told him that one. You have to. Because when he said, I'm not interested either, I said, okay, good.
No, this one.
So I relaxed and I felt this was good. So that's how all we went. So he's the one with whom we really became serious. Because for him, when he met me, he just came to marry. I think he was looking for somebody to marry. And then when he saw me, because we met at a kasiki of his cousin, and the next day was a wedding, and it is that evening when he told me he wants to marry me. And I laughed. That's how they married. This is not serious. And we started dating. But even when I tell you my dating with my husband, the first days of dating, when we went out, as a second year law student, I was arguing, and for him, he doesn't like arguing. So the next day he came, he visited me in the evening, and he told me, for me, I don't like arguments and so on. I told him, okay, if you don't like arguments, I will see how to reduce them. And then, when he came the next weekend and took me out, arguing, we were arguing. Then the next day he came telling me, I told you about argument. I said, excuse me, you. Who are you? Do you want to be a boyfriend or a singer? I said, you've got to choose between the two. Because if you want to be a boyfriend, I told you, for me, my training is to argue. I'm studying to be a lawyer, and that's what we do. What occupies me is arguing. For him, little did he know that for me, I cannot be pushed around. I had seen such injustices. I had resisted even my father, because my father, eventually I defeated him in a clan court. Because when he called the Oro clan and he told his story, I told mine about don't bring a northerner, don't bring what, and I told them, now I have brought him Munyankore. He had not told me not to bring him Munyankore. And then he said, but Kobrunga, in the whole of this village here, in this village, couldn't you find...
He wanted you to get someone around, someone
a girl to marry, a boy to marry.
With.
And by the way, let me tell you, on the Kuhinjira night, in the evening, she came into the bedroom and said, but Kobrunga, why did you decide to marry? You have studied law. You could come and be here to Israel and be a judge. Why do you want to go and marry so that men may push you around? She's clever.
Yes.
He said, why do you want to marry? Men will push you around. You can be a judge here. and not married. But anyway, in the end, it was already too late. I had brought this man, and the next day they kuhinjira, but all the time he had always told me, you gave yourself to a man. And when eventually we came to time to marry, when I saw him very serious, I told him, you know what, I see you becoming very serious for a longer relationship. I want to tell you that for me, I can never be beaten.
You warned him before.
I said, I can never be beaten. If you want to marry me, register it in your mind, I can never be beaten. So one thing I want to tell you, that my husband took me subject to my terms. And I keep telling young women, don't hide your character. Don't pretend. You put your terms on the floor, on the table, so that this man will take you subject to your terms, the way you are. And for me, I think taking me subject to my terms and the way I am is one of the things that has contributed to the success of this marriage. So it is better that people be themselves. Let them be who they are. In darkness, in the light, in silence. Because even when I'm silent, people know who I am. One time, the former Vice President Specioza Kazwe told me that, you know, Matembe, the problem with you is that you are so transparent that what you are thinking in your heart is reflected on your face.
That's I think she was right.
Yeah,
I think she was right.
Because I move with what I feel.
Yes. And I think it's a good thing.
I think so. I've not lost by it.
Yes.
It's
bad to pretend. Yes.
I praise God for it.
So when you got married to your husband, how long were you together before you started getting children?
We got children immediately. The firstborn, I got my firstborn when I was still at Makerere. I was in my 3rd year, doing my final exams. That's when I got the firstborn. And then after 3 years, of course after that I continued to the Road Development Center to get my postgraduate diploma. And I left the baby with him. Actually, he's the one who babysat that baby and brought him up. Because I left the baby, I think 3 months, and went back to the Road Development Center to finish my diploma.
You being a mother to only sons, didn't your in-laws bother you not bearing them a daughter or a granddaughter?
In-laws had no business in my marriage. The in-laws got to learn it right from the beginning, that I have married my husband and I'm ready to make my home, and it is not going to be subject to their rules and orders. Nevertheless, I made sure I must give them their place in my home. You know, if I can give you an example, the first time my father-in-law visited us here in Kampala, and I prepared food and we sat at the table to eat, and then he said, this modern life, how can I sit here at the table with my daughter in law?
No, yes.
She told me, you shouldn't be sitting here. You should sit there on the mat in the kitchen. I told him, excuse me, this is my home. When I come to your home, you can show me where to sit. But when you come to my home, I am the one to show you where to sit. I didn't say it like that. You know, in Banyankore, we have very rich proverbs which speak, they communicate our message. So I told him, my father-in-law, my dear father-in-law, Garukaha ujhabwanyineka. It is a proverb which says that it is the owner of the home who gives you where to be and to sit or to stay. And therefore, I have given you where to sit. So he got it very, very clear.
He didn't take it bad?
He didn't. He was a very nice, loving man. I don't know how he took it in his heart, but he had no choice. There was no choice. There was no bargaining power. Now, when I went to to the village to visit him in the village. I went there when I was a member of the Uganda Constitutional Commission, and I had a driver and a bodyguard. Wow. And so I was a big woman. And these men were now the small people. When I reached there, he got a mat, a skin of an animal. We sit on them, yes. Skin of a cow. And he said, you sit there. And he got 2 chairs and gave one to my driver and another to my bodyguard. And they kept standing, and I didn't sit. And I went, of course, I knelt down to greet him. I knelt down and greeted him. After I had greeted him, he said, okay, sit there. And I said, you know, Daddy, I am not going to sit on this mat because that's not where I belong. Do you see these people whom you are giving chairs? He said, yes. Do you see them sitting on the chairs? He said, no, they have not sat. I said, because I'm their boss. And there is nowhere I can sit on the mat.
And they sit on the chair.
And they sit on the chair. And they know that since I'm their boss, I sit on the chair. And when I sit on the mat, they will not respect me anymore. So you can see, I make my terms clear even when it comes to in-laws. So with that kind of relationship, would you see them there to ask for anything else? I am sure my husband had wanted to have a daughter, and his intentions were not to have 4 children. His intentions were to have as many children as he could. Because I asked him and he told me. I told him, sir, my intention is to have 4 children. Whether they are girls or boys, that's what I want to have. These children, I am the one who carries the responsibility of having them in my womb, of producing them, and I know that there are probabilities of a woman dying when in childbirth. Yes. And I said, I do not want to die in childbirth. The responsibility of determining how many children should be with me, because I'm the one who can die in childbirth. I'm the one who knows what it means to bear a child in your womb, the pains you go through, the difficulties you go through. I'm the one who goes through them. And I would like to have 4 sons.
Understanding one's life can partly contribute to success in one's life. Having goals and knowing your capability to execute them can distance you from failure. Miriam knew how capable she was to take on the boy's position and has refused to be judged by gender. And since then, she has fought her way to the table of men. This is Life Stories. A mother to 4 boys, Dr. Miriam Matembe regrets nothing about losing out on a girl child. Like any other parent who would feel like having a gender-balanced family, hers is a different story. She truly believes that God saved her from practices like bride price. Contrary to her husband, Dr. Miriam Matembe has no room for bride price practices. This is Life Stories.
How about you? How did you feel not getting a girl?
For me, I had no problem. I wanted 4 children. God gave me 4 children. And when finally I did not get a girl, I was very grateful to God. I said, God knows my feelings. God knows who I am. Because let me tell you, one thing I detest and I don't like is bride price. I don't like bride price. And my husband loves bride price. He enjoys, going as a delegation to start negotiating for bride price. So for me, I thought the first time we would have divorced would have been on the marriage of my daughter, because the clan would have wanted bride price and I do not want bride price. So I said, God has saved me the hassle of bride price business. And to know that God is so gracious to me. I have so far got 3 daughters in love, and none of the parents have asked for bride price.
Wow.
And I feel so great
Yes.
that they are good. I love the parents of my daughters-in-law. I love my daughters-in-law very especially because they never involved me in this whole issue of bride price. My in-laws respected my principles. And I'm continuing to pray that even with the last son,
They don't ask
they
for
don't
bride
ask
price.
for bride price.
Yes.
I would be very, very glad.
There was a time you said if a woman gets married to a man and the man is impotent, they should divorce that man. Why did you say so? Don't you think these men have the capability or the love or the right
So
to
what
be loved?
do they marry for?
But they don't know them.
Let me tell you. Marriage, central to marriage is sexual play. Sex was ordained by God. God commissioned sex between a husband and a wife. And even Paul says, if you cannot resist from sex, then go and marry. Okay? So central to marriage is sexual play. Sex, God knows why he created sex. But he commissioned it among husband and wife. And so if there is no sex between husband and wife, now I don't know what you call it. Now, what you are quoting to me is that I was explaining what the law says. One of the grounds of annulling marriage, nullifying a marriage, is impotence. Impotence. If you cannot erect and play sex with your wife, then, what are you saying now? Because you are telling me men, we should sympathize with men. So as you sympathize with this man, you abstain from sex or you keep cheating on him? I want you to give me advice on this one. You are here in the house now. The man cannot play sex, but he loves you. I don't know what else he does and so on. And for you, you have the urge for sex. Now,
I think that
do you
depends.
divorce? Do you abstain in sympathy with him or you cheat on him?
That depends on who you're married to. There are other women who, if they are given love and they are taken care of, they will abstain.
Who is telling you those lies? What is
That's
love?
what I think.
What is love? How does a man express love? You have bought dresses. You have bought all this. You can't give me children. I want children. You can't fondle me and give me sexual satisfaction. Sexual satisfaction is medicine. It is healing. That's why God created sex. It's not for a joke. God who created us saw it very fit to create a man and a woman and told them, go and produce and multiply through, of course, a sexual play. A marriage is not a marriage until it is consummated. And consummated means they play sex. They engage in a sex and they become one. You don't become one. What makes you one is the integration of your bodies into each other. That's what makes you one. It's not just standing there and they declare you one. No.
You're well known to be a women's rights activist. Where do you get the power and the urge to fight for women's rights?
I do believe that this is my God-given purpose in life. Fight against injustices, unfairness, and truthfulness. I do believe, and I want to tell you that each of us on this earth were created by God for a particular purpose.
Yes.
And we need to identify that purpose and pursue that purpose and realize it. People say she's so strong, she's so courageous.
Fearless.
Fearless, yes. What do you expect when I am pursuing God's purpose? That shows that God is on my side God is with me. God gives me the courage, and the word of God says, don't fear, don't fear, don't fear. I'm with you, don't fear. As long as I'm pursuing God's purpose for my life, his destiny for my life, he equips me with the necessary skills, with the necessary talents, with the necessary wisdom to pursue that. For me, my purpose is to fight against injustice and unfairness, because God hates injustice. God hates ill treatment of human beings. God hates unfairness and injustice. Power, influence, and confidence come from a strong sense of identity. Knowing who you are gives you the power, the influence, and the confidence. And for me, I know who I am in God, and that's what makes me who I am. The moment you divert, then you fall into the hands of the devil. Like these children in the universities, they have fallen into the hands of the devil, and Satan is using them, and they have no future. Now to the women, both in homes and public life, I want to tell them that there is a joy. There is great joy in founding a family, rearing and raising children. There's a great joy in that, because it gives you a purpose to live. I want to tell you that my boys have really given me a purpose to live. They have made me the proud mother. My husband, we need to understand each other. When you are living with a man, we must understand he is not you, you are not him. You have to put your terms on the table, and he respects your terms, and you also respect his terms. Try to understand and love one another. Understand and persist and persevere. Unless the man becomes violent. I don't like violence. God does not like violence. And bringing up children together and counseling them. Let me tell you why our children have gone astray. Parents have gone to seek money, materialism. They have run after materialism. They have run after riches. They have run after their pleasures, and they have forgotten the treasure that God put at their disposal. And yet these days, marriages are breaking like what? I am not telling that mine was a smooth marriage. Far from it. It was not so smooth.
But you've done your best.
But my friend,
yes,
I credit to God for it.
All right then, thank you so much for your time.
Okay, you are welcome.
With this story, we learn that determination, perseverance, and above all, trust in God will lead each of us to success in life. Being a member of the Pan-African Parliament at one time and chairperson on rules, privileges, and discipline, former Minister for Ethics and Integrity, and being a member of the Constitutional Court that amends the Constitution are one of the lifetime achievements of Dr. Miriam Matembe. She portrays true characteristics of an activist. Her dream and passion is to see an injustice-free Uganda, empowering the girl child and seeing that women share the same opportunities as men in terms of education, jobs, and marital affairs. Hers is a true story of success. What is yours? This has been Life Stories. Till next time, I'm Zuena. God bless you.